Hello, welcome back to the Breaking News Update. My name is Jimmy Boyd, and you are watching Boyd News. I want to thank you so much for tuning in today. I've got a breaking news report coming out for the United States. We're going to talk about the U.S. Army and also Ukraine's military as well. New reports here on your screen. U.S. Army launches a large scale drone reform after watching Ukraine. The U.S. Army is launching its most significant overhaul since the Cold War, investing a projected $36 billion over the next 5 years to expand use of drones and fully modernize weapon systems. Okay, I want to show you guys this report because we've been discussing how on the front lines inside of Ukraine, we've been hearing some reports that Ukraine has created like a drone wall where they're using lots of different types of drones. They've got land based drones, aerial drones, they've got small FPV quadcopter drones that they use. And Ukraine heavily relies on drone usage in this war against Russia because they're heavily outmanned. Russia's got a lot more troops than Ukraine does. But with the addition of these drones, what we've been reporting recently over the last maybe 3 or 4 months now is that Russia's attacks are really starting to slow down on the front line. And I think a lot of this has to do with drone usage. So the US Army is starting to realize that this is future warfare, ladies and gentlemen, that drones in the future is going to be how wars will be fought. And they're realizing how effective these drones have been against the Russian army in this war, and that a lot of outdated equipment, such as like tanks and maybe other types of vehicles, might not be as effective as using a drone. So apparently one of the major goals of the US Army is to equip each division with a fleet of around 1,000 drones, and they're going to start phasing out outdated equipment, even such as the Apache helicopters. So I'm going to show you guys some information today and talk about this. I think it's a pretty interesting story to show you. Let's go ahead and hop on over here to United 24 Media. U.S. Army to increase drone use instead of armored vehicles, drawing lessons from Ukraine front lines. Okay, so here's a soldier from the Lithuanian Army holding a drone here. They're probably preparing to launch one during a training mission. So let's go ahead and check out this report here. The United States has launched a large-scale rearmament effort by shifting focus from planned armored vehicle contracts to acquiring thousands of drones, according to an article published by the Wall Street Journal on April 30th. Okay, so this is apparently due to a report that came out a few days ago. Just yesterday, some mainstream news was starting to pick it up, but it also has been reported today. And it says here, drawing heavily on lessons from the war in Ukraine, the U.S. Army is reportedly overhauling its forces with the goal of equipping each division with a fleet of around 1,000 drones while phasing out outdated equipment. According to the outlet, the first phase of the plan will see 10 divisions re-equipped with unmanned aerial vehicles to support frontline operations. These drones will be used for reconnaissance, strike missions, and ammunition delivery to troops at the front. We've got to learn how to use drones, how to fight with them, how to scale them, produce them, and employ them in our fights so we can see beyond line of sight, said Colonel Donald Neal, the commander of the U.S. 2nd Cavalry Regiment. We've always had drones since I've been in the Army, but it has been very few. Yeah, so the U.S. Army doesn't really use a lot of drones, right? Especially like Ukraine does. What we recently heard was Ukraine is domestically producing somewhere around 2 million, maybe more by now, drones each year. And I believe the US produces somewhere around 100,000 drones per year. So look at the difference there. The US is realizing that drone warfare is the future, and they've got to start mass producing these now. And not only that, but training the military in the US on how to use them properly, right? And make them effective on the battlefield. So it says here, Daniel Driscoll, the Secretary of the Army, said the first three brigades, units of 3,000 to 5,000 soldiers within divisions have already been equipped with some of the new drone systems. He expects the transformation of the remaining units to take about 2 years. Army units that have not yet begun to upgrade typically rely on a limited number of long-range reconnaissance systems, many of which were first deployed over a decade ago. Drones are just one part of the military's broader modernization push. According to the report, the U.S. Army also aims to integrate cell phones, tablets, and internet technology into the battlefield ecosystem. It is investing around $3 billion in the development of advanced counter-drone systems and electronic warfare capabilities. So that's a whole other side to this, right? So counter-drone systems, like maybe other types of drones that can take down incoming drones. We've been seeing that with Ukraine. Ukraine has a few of them. I forget the names of them, but they've got some smaller drones that can actually counter incoming Shahed drones and take them down. And then also electronic warfare capabilities. That's a big one too, because if you're going to have an ability to attack, maybe your enemy might have these drones as well. So you need electronic warfare to be able to bring these down. Okay, and then finally, it says here officials say the complete overhaul will require 36 billion in funding over the next 5 years. The Army plans to fund it without increasing the defense budget by phasing out outdated weapon systems and retiring others. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth approved the plan in a directive signed earlier this week. I think it's a very smart move to do that. Phase out outdated systems instead of increasing the budget for the military. Get rid of things that are not effective on the battlefield. I mean, we've seen already with the Russians, a lot of their vehicles just get destroyed. That's why Russia had to borrow a bunch of military vehicles from Kazakhstan just to have their parade that they're planning to have on the 9th. So it also says here we aren't going to ask for money. General Randy George, the Army Chief of Staff, said, what we want to do is spend the money that we have better. As part of the overhaul, the Army is ending procurement of Humvees, its primary light vehicle for decades, and will no longer purchase the Joint Light Tactical Vehicle. It is also halting orders for the M10 light tank, which turned out to be heavier and less effective than originally envisioned when the program launched a decade ago. Additionally, the Army plans to retire some older Apache helicopters, reducing civilian personnel is expected to further contribute to overall cost savings. So that's something interesting too. Yeah, like think about what I said earlier when it comes to Ukraine on the front line, how they're short on personnel. Russia has a much larger military, so Ukraine has to rely on drones. This means that more drones are going to be used on the front lines versus troops, and we know Ukraine is trying to do that to save every Ukrainian life they possibly can. So the U.S. Army is seeing that as well, and just think about in the future also, we might start to see major reductions in the size of armies around the world, that personnel will not need to be used as much, and it will now be drones. And it kind of makes me think of like the movie Terminator with the whole Skynet situation where we have machines fighting machines. I mean, I think this is the very beginning of that. And the war inside of Ukraine has definitely exposed it. So I'm curious to know what you guys think about all these details. That's going to be it for today's update. If you got something out of this, please smash that like button. Also, if you enjoy my content, please consider subscribing down below. Hit the notification bell. That way YouTube can notify you. And with that, hope you all have a great day. Everybody take care and God bless. And we'll see you in the next one.